Welcome to the Parenting Coach Podcast with Crystal. Over 7 years ago, I felt like I was stuck in this cycle of yelling and reactivity in my parenting that I did not want to be in, but I didn't know how to get out of. I knew how I wanted to parent pretty much exactly, and I'd spent hours reading books, but not finding a way to show up how I wanted to. That's when I started to turn inwards. My own inward journey was what my family needed. As I changed, everything around me changed. My kids' meltdowns decreased by 90% or more with no medications or therapy. I stopped yelling, sibling fighting became almost entirely non-existent, and I found that this change flowed into other areas of my life too. My intuition increased. I started to run my life and business in a very different way. If this sounds like something you want to, I can help. Join me each week as I share my journey, including the laughter, fun, hard times, and tears. Tune in for support, guidance, and fun conversations with my favorite experts, and really anything else that interests me too. Our beliefs about our kids matter, and we can be one of the greatest influences of their lives. Intentional parenting sets us up to help support our kids through any challenge and instill them with beliefs that will help them achieve true success, not just the type of success that we're socialized to believe matters most. In this episode, you're going to hear my little story about dropping my oldest off at college and all the mixed emotions and how I brought up this topic over the weekend, what manifestation has to do with parenting and all the spiritual principles related to that, what you value most and how to instill those values into your kids through manifestation, how to find out if shame is blocking belief work in any area of your life. But I'm going to share a parenting example that you'll likely relate pretty closely to. And I'm going to talk about my $5 live coaching event that will do more than just teach you these principles. It'll show you, and we will get there together. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Today is Breathing Belief into Our Kids, Part 2, Manifestation in Parenting. I've been thinking a lot about this topic since I recorded it a couple of weeks ago. And I even had somebody reach out to be like, hey, how do you actually do this? So today's podcast episode is in response to that. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to Part 1, Breathing Belief into Our Kids. And also, I'm going to be doing a workshop, a 5-day coaching event for $5, where every day I'm going to be teaching how to do this specific thing, breathing belief into our kids, what gets in the way of it, what we really value. We're going to get very clear and feel very confident in how we want to show up as parents and what that looks like, and then how we can follow through with it so that we can make the most of the time that we have with our kids at home. So I will talk a little bit more about that at the end. You can scroll down wherever you're listening to your podcast to the show notes, and you'll be able to register for that. Make sure to bring a friend, and it's going to start on September 30th. So this weekend, my thoughts and feelings have been very tender as I've been dropping my son off at college. He's our oldest. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you probably know that. And while we were traveling around the world, he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do for the next year. And so once we had this decided and kind of in mind, it came together pretty quickly. And in like just faster than I ever thought, we were dropping him off at college. So I'm actually recording this while I'm in my hotel room, hanging out for day 2 of orientation, and just feeling so many mixed emotions. If you've ever had college drop off with a kiddo, I mean, I don't know, maybe it gets different with each one, but with our first one, definitely tender. I'm sad, for sure going to miss him, but also so much excitement to see him go out and do this fun thing in the world and to do something really difficult. Like tonight, we were dropping him off and he was going to this really big kickoff event for the school year that 2 or 3 or more thousand people go to. And he was going by himself, knowing nobody there at all. And his roommate, who was an introvert and was like, there's no way I'm going to do that, said, that's really brave of you. And I was like, that really is actually so brave of you. And anyways, he's doing a lot of big new things. And we are also. So that's been on my mind, as well as I've been swirling around thinking about this topic and thinking about how I can explain to you what it is and how we can do it and how we can use it to create more intentional parenting. I think that intentional parenting is tricky. It's really tough, but also it's so worth it. And for me, intentional parenting means focusing inwards, noticing what's happening for me, doing my own inner work so that I can show up more aligned in the way that I want to. And by that, I don't mean perfect. I don't mean that I never lose it or I never parent in a way I don't want to. For sure I do. But that for the most part, I'm able to parent in a way that I think is really helpful and really connection-based and really supportive. So I'm going to share a little story with you. A while ago, I think this was a couple of years ago, Most of the coaching that I focus on is shame-free parenting, shame for us, how it's coming up for us. I talk about this all the time on Instagram and with my clients. That's just my main focus. And I love it so much. I love this focus. And I was talking to my husband one time, and he has heard me say a lot of shame-based thoughts about what people are dealing with. I don't ever talk to him about clients, but I just say, like, this is an interesting thought that came up or whatever for me or for somebody else. And at one point, he said something along the lines of, I don't really remember feeling that way. Like, I just don't really resonate so much with that. And so I was asking a little bit more about that. Like, well, don't you, when you go into new situations, get really worried about it or nervous about it or feeling like you can't do it? And he was like, no, I really just try to pump myself up about it. And the more I dug into it, the more that I felt like his kind of level-headedness and confidence in his own self and his beingness came from his parenting, because we talked a little bit about his mom also, and that she just really had belief in him, and he believed that for himself as well. And so fast forward, we visit with his sister and brother-in-law pretty regularly when we can, because they don't live close to us. And so I asked her about it. I just said, hey, JD said this. We kind of had this interesting conversation, and this is what came about. I'm just curious for you, like, what do you think? And she's been able to accomplish some pretty amazing things in her life, and is very successful in her world and in doing what she does in her career. And she, again, said that she felt like it was her mom. She's like, I really think that my mom just always believed in me. She always told me that I could do whatever I wanted and be whatever I wanted. And she just had so much confidence that I just believed her. And I thought that was a beautiful story, because the goal within coaching, if you ever had a coach, is that you kind of lean on somebody else's belief for you until you take on that belief. So maybe I come into coaching and I'm feeling like I'm not really doing that great of a job or whatever it is, in parenting or in business. And over time, we have a lot of conversations and things kind of open up. And I start to understand that the other person believes in me a lot, even in the area that maybe I don't believe in myself. And over time, I kind of create that belief for myself as well and break my own limiting beliefs about myself. And as they were both kind of describing this, I thought that's really what their mother was able to do for them, and how beautiful that was, that she was able to give them this parenting style in which she believed so much in them and their ability to become whatever they wanted, that they really did. And they've been able to do that. So, and on the flip side of that, I will share a story from me. I've shared this on the podcast a few years ago, but I remember I was doing some belief work, and I was writing down some beliefs. And I noticed that one belief that came up for me over and over and over again was that one of my kiddos never listened to me. And I really believed that, like, wholeheartedly, like 110%. I was like, nope, no matter what I say, he never listens. And because of that story that I had, that's all that I saw. I'm sure that I pointed it out to him. I'm sure that I talked about it. I'm sure that I really nagged him about not ever listening. And I definitely know that because that was my brain story, my brain was only sharing evidence of that being true. And over and over and over again, it just became more true. So this one week, I decided to do a really fun experiment. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to believe that the opposite is true for the whole week and see what happens. And it did break my brain a little bit for the first day or so. I was just like, okay, anytime that I noticed that I felt like he wasn't listening, I was like, no, he actually listens a lot. Like, he's actually a great listener. And I would repeat that to myself, and I would like write it down, and I would focus on times when I noticed that he did listen to me. And over time, it took some time, I think about day 3 or day 4, I realized like, oh, there's actually quite a few times where I feel like he is listening to me in times where I wouldn't have noticed before. And by day 5 or day 6, I had completely changed my belief. I had noticed all of the little times where he actually was listening to me the very first time. Like, when I would ask him to do something, he would do it. And you might think that something changed, or maybe it was me or whatever, but no, I really, really, really did believe this before. And I only saw evidence of that. And when I started to break my brain a little bit and break that belief a little bit, I immediately started seeing evidence that the opposite was true, until by the end of the week, I really had a different belief about him. So this is what I think about of manifestation. So how does manifestation fit in with parenting? Maybe you've heard me talk about manifestation. I've done this on the podcast a few times. I've had other people on the podcast talk about it. But it's really believing things into existence before you see evidence of them. And I'm going to say that again, believing things into existence before you see any evidence of them. So with that listening, idea. I definitely had no idea, right? Like I thought that he never listened, but I just decided that I was going to create this belief for myself, even though in my mind there was zero evidence of that being true. And I really do think I believed this into existence. I think that my brain wasn't noticing that it was already happening. And the more that I noticed, the more it became true, the more he interacted with me in a different way. And I think it all just happened. And manifestation, I think, has happened in a lot of different areas of my life. But going back to my brother, not my brother, my husband and his sister's example, his mother was able to believe that for them before she saw evidence of that, right? Before they became adults, before they made the choices that they would make as adults and go into their career paths and education and how they were going to turn out. I'm sure that there was a lot of times where she could have chosen not to believe that, where there was a lot of evidence around her physically that would make her not believe that. But she, for whatever reason, was able to stick to that belief. And because of her strong, strong belief in them, they were able to borrow that belief from her until it became their own belief. So I think these are the examples that I've been thinking of over the last couple of weeks as I've been thinking about manifestation and parenting and this idea of breathing belief into our kids. So how do we do it? If you want to take out a piece of paper and a pen, that might be helpful. Unless you're driving the car, do this later. One word of caution is don't use this to fulfill your own dreams. So if when you were little, you like really wanted to be a ballerina or an NBA player, and you're like, I know if I can breathe a belief into my kids, I'm going to make them be something that I didn't get to be, or I'm going to make them be something like super specific. It doesn't work in that way. Why? Because their path is going to play out in the way that they need to. So if you notice the story about from my husband and his sister, it was much more about you can do whatever you want. You can become whatever you want. That's very different than I've decided what you should become and now here become it. I'm giving you my dream for you that I think is best for you and then become it. That's really different than I believe that you can achieve. I believe that you can succeed. I have confidence in your abilities. And also you get to choose how that pans out. We can't just take over somebody's agency and be like, I know what's best for you. So if we can't do that, then what kind of beliefs do we want to breathe into our kids? If you listened to my last podcast episode 2 weeks ago about this, I talk about some beliefs that I have felt like I have breathed into my kids that were positive and then also negative and how that played out. And so what beliefs do we want to be breathing into our kids? I would say number one, get clear on your values. So if your child was leaving home tomorrow, super easy for me to think about this right now because he is leaving home right now. What would be most important to you? What would matter the absolute most? That is a value. I used to think value was this kind of like strange out there abstract word that people talked about in like corporations and stuff, but like nobody actually knew what it meant. But when I think about it in that way, like if my child was leaving home tomorrow, which he is, what would matter most? What would I most want to have taught him, for him to have become, for him to have as part of his personality or who he is? Spend time getting clear on this. And in that 5-day workshop that I was talking about, we're going to be doing some coaching. We're going to be doing some subconscious reprogramming. We're going to be doing some intuition stuff. But we're definitely beginning to be spending some time on this one, like what actually matters to us most. I'm going to give you a couple ideas to start off with. I have done several speaking events at parent councils and church organizations, parent meetings, schools, things like that. And I often start with this question, like, what do you really care about? Like, what really is parenting? What do we really care about? How do we want to do it? What do we want to instill in our kids? And the same things come up over and over and over again. Often it's things like empathy, compassion, personal responsibility, emotional intelligence, connection to self and to others, healthy relationships. There's a lot of things that come up just over and over and over again that I think we all kind of want for our kids. So you can spend some time brainstorming that. And then this is what you do next. So I would say this is like step 2. That's step 1, getting really clear on your values. Step 2, write down your child's name at the top of the piece of paper. What are all the beliefs that someone who already has that value would have about themselves? So for instance, put yourself in another person's shoes. If you're like, oh, that person is really empathetic, or that person is really hardworking, or this person that I know is very responsible. I want you to go into their mind, put yourself in their shoes for a minute and just think, what do you think they believe about themselves? So for instance, when I was talking to my husband and I was talking to my sister-in-law, and they were talking about how they just really believed that they could do anything they wanted, that they would be successful at whatever they chose. That was a belief that they had about themselves. I can succeed. I can choose to do whatever I want. I can be successful at whatever I choose to be. So put yourself in somebody else's shoes, um, as if they've already are that person, and figure out what beliefs they would have about themselves. Usually these are in I ams. I am productive. I am a hard worker. I get things done. I can do anything I put my mind to. I am compassionate. I love and deeply care about other people or about myself, or maybe both. So that's number two. So you're going to write down your child's name, and then you're going to write down the beliefs of what you think somebody who already has these values would believe about themselves. So these are the beliefs that we want to be breathing into our kids, right? Number three, how are these true right now? Now, this is going to be the hardest step for sure, because you're going to have to dig really deep, and it's going to already start to break your brain a little bit, right? So going back to when my kiddo was not listening to me story, my initial thoughts about it were definitely like, he never listens. He doesn't listen no matter what I say. He doesn't want to listen to me. Maybe even like we don't have a great relationship, something like that. So if it was the opposite, if I was like, well, how is it true right now that he does listen, which is an exercise that I did throughout that whole week. I asked myself, how are these true right now? What evidence is there right now? What evidence is there? Is there any evidence at all from today, from last week, from a year ago? We're just going to write down any possible evidence. Like if we had to, go in one of those debate clubs and we were debating now on the side of like, this is already true, what could we possibly say? That's going to be a tricky. And then we're going to do a thought dump. So if you've been around here for a while, you've done these before, a lot probably, but that's like plain piece of paper, notebook, whatever, pen, and you're going to stream of consciousness, write whatever comes to mind. And what you're going to ask yourself is, why does my brain not fully believe this now? So whatever those beliefs are that you think that that person would believe, if they already believe those about themselves, how you feel like maybe they already are true now. If you were able to come up with anything, that's okay. If it's like way too hard for you. And then why does my brain not believe this now? So that's going to be thought dump, stream of consciousness, all the things about like, well, yesterday he didn't listen 100 times, or yet this morning this happened or whatever. So just dump all of those thoughts out. And the next step is, I don't even know what number of step we're on, but whatever step we're on now, you're breaking apart the beliefs. So breaking apart beliefs means, how can I unbelieve these beliefs that I currently have? So that last step, that thought dump step, those are the beliefs that you have right now that are keeping us stuck from believing something new. It is much more productive to unbelieve our current beliefs than to try and believe something new. This is why positive affirmations don't often work, even a tiny little bit, sometimes at all, because our brain doesn't believe them at all. If you almost believe something, then saying them out loud, or thinking them, or writing them out and reminding yourself of them on little sticky notes, that will actually work quite well. But if your brain is like at a 1 to 10 unbelief and you're like, no, that's definitely not true, you could stand in front of a mirror and say that belief all day, all day, all day, and it's never going to change. You could practice your positive belief and it's never going to change. You have to focus on unbelieving your current thinking, focusing your brain intentionally on evidence that it is true now, and even just questioning, like, what really is listening? What does listening even look like? What do I think listening is? What does listening look like for me? What does listening look like for people with neurodiversity? Have I listened to anybody talk about something like that? How do I know that they're not actually listening, right? Asking yourself some really powerful questions to start breaking apart those beliefs. You can also be thinking about, what else have you believed before you saw evidence of it? Right? I'm sure there has been things like this. So when I was starting to drive a car back when, I don't know, it was probably 15 or 16, I believed that one day I would be able to drive. I didn't believe it was going to happen soon. In fact, I hated driving and I tried to avoid it all the time. But I definitely knew that I was going to be able to drive one day. Like I never questioned like whether or not that was going to happen, even though at the time there was absolutely no evidence for it and I hated it. And I pressed the gas instead of the brake when I was practicing with my mom, and she freaked out in the parking lot and was like, maybe we should just put you in lessons. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. But just to say that there was no evidence of that, but I just knew like eventually this is going to happen. I just knew it. I also never questioned whether or not I was going to graduate high school. I was in school. I've been in school for a long time. That's what people do. You go through, you finish high school. Also, even when I was a mom thinking about my little kids, Every once in a while, I question this belief, but for the most part, I thought, one day when my kids are older, they will sleep through the night. Even though they weren't sleeping through the night at all, even though there was no evidence that they would ever learn the skill of sleeping through the night, zero evidence of that actually, I thought when they're older, this is going to happen. Like it'll happen sometime. They'll find good friends. You can think about this in your life and your business and your parenting. There has for sure been beliefs that you had zero evidence of, but you believed anyways. And eventually they came to pass over the course of the years or months or days or whatever. So I'm going to share, that's kind of the how to. And we will dig into a lot more of the how to, and we will coach through it, and we will bring examples through it, and we will like get you there. It will be, this is just a teaching podcast episode. That will be coaching. That workshop's going to be all about coaching, and we're going to actually help you do that together. But I want to talk about a few spiritual principles of manifestation that I want to remind you of if you haven't listened to a podcast episode about manifestation of mine recently, because these are going to be really important when you're doing manifestation and parenting as well. Number one is drop the how. We don't have to know how. We don't have to know how our kids are going to sleep through the night. Don't have to know how things are going to turn out exactly. As we drop that, we focus less on it and we lean more into trust. Our nervous system is a lot more calm, a lot more regulated, and we feel a lot more confident if we're not focusing on all of the tiny little micromanaging points of how this is going to turn out. Another point is for the highest good of all. So maybe it's not the way, right? I used to want my kids to sleep through the night when they were really little, and that was never what turned out. It took years and years and years. But I often practice this principle of for the highest good of all. So even if something doesn't turn out in the way that I wanted it to, I know it's for the highest good of me and all involved. One really great example of this is patience. I used to constantly pray for patience. I was like, help me be patient. And I would like read books about it and I would talk to people about it. And I was like, why am I not getting this? I was just not figuring it out. And I dealt with a lot of anger and a lot of frustration as a mom. And years and years and years and years later, when I did go through my own little like dark night of the soul journey and figured this all out, and then eventually became a life coach, I think about all of the people that I was able to help and support because parenting wasn't easy for me, because patience did not come easily to me, because that was one of the most difficult things that I ever did in my life. That is why I'm able to help people in the way that I am. And I really believe it was for the highest good of everyone. And I continue to believe that about my kids as well. I don't sit and regret and worry about all of the ways in which I ruined them because I parented in a really not great way for the first decade or more of their life. I just think about that must be part of their path also. That must be part of their highest good. They must have to learn something that maybe my younger kids didn't need to learn, or maybe a different lesson or whatever. And I really just trust that. Another one is that trusting that everything is working. This is really tough. Even if nothing changes, even if you see nothing physically change around you, trust that everything is working anyways, and that this is the way it needs to be. This is the speed that it needs to go at. The last one that I'm going to mention, well, actually, I'll do two more, but they're kind of interconnected. You can only believe things into existence to the amount of your own self-worth. So if I'm struggling with my self-worth, if I'm just like not feeling that great about myself, I'm not going to be able to manifest to a higher power than that. It's not going to come in the same way because I don't believe it's possible, because I don't believe that I'm deserving of it, because I don't trust in the process, because I don't trust in myself. This goes hand in hand with the next one, which is if under the surface there's shame present in your parenting, it'll block you from these beliefs, because we might be able to practice them a little bit, but under the surface, we really don't believe it. And this is things like, I'm not doing good enough. I'm not enough. I'm messing up my kids. I think maybe I'm just adding to their generational trauma instead of taking away from it. I'm really ruining this thing, all of those kind of shame-based thoughts. And you might consciously not recognize that those are there. You might consciously believe like, no, I actually think I'm doing a great job. And you could like give yourself evidence of that. But sometimes there's this little niggling under the surface that's like, but I don't know if I am, but I don't think I actually am, right? Like when your thoughts are a little bit quiet and you're like falling asleep at night and you're like, I don't really know how this is going. So how do we determine if there's shame there, even if it's more subconscious and under the surface? There's 3 shame shields. I've talked about this before, so you might recognize this, but the shame shields are people pleasing, shutting down and withdrawing. And the third is like aggressiveness and defensiveness. So if you are triggered by something And it makes you react in one of these three ways: people pleasing, making everybody else around me comfortable, even though there's a lot of uncomfortability inside myself, right? Saying yes to people when it's a full body no inside my body, but I say yes anyways. That's people pleasing. Shutting down and withdrawing could be physical, but it also can be emotional. Like I'm just peace out, like I'm not in this situation anymore. And the third, that defensiveness, is like blame, right? Defensiveness and aggressiveness is going to be blame, like turning outwards. So those are the three shame shields. You can also notice just like when you're feeling triggered, right? So somebody says something around you, maybe somebody sends you a text, or there's a comment on social media, or your husband says something, and underneath the surface, you're like feeling that little like inflammation, like that jolt of energy, of like negative energy, of big emotion. That's what we call a trigger, or I also call it like an emotional activation. I'm going to give you a little example. I shared this example a couple of weeks ago on Instagram, and I thought it was a really good example. It ties in well here because it's about why your child not listening to you is really bothering you. And I came up with this from my own examples of my children not listening to me. So, when you ask over and over and over again, and then you lose it a little bit, and maybe feel guilty later on that you lost it, but also a little defensive about losing it because it was their fault in the first place. If they had just listened, you could parent how you wanted to all along. This is like from my own experience. I'm sharing this. Think about the last time this happened. Get really specific and pull up that memory, that time when you got really frustrated. Ask yourself, why did that bother me so much? Repeat. Once you've answered that, question that answer. What about that bothers me though? Repeat this again and again. Question that answer. Why? Or what about that bothers me? We're going to go a few layers deep, 3, 4, 5 layers deep. And then you're going to ask yourself, if you didn't already get to this, what am I making this mean about me? It will be somehow connected to some meaning about myself. I'll give you a personal example. I did the same exercise on myself, and here are my brain thoughts. Layer 1, kid should listen. He should listen to me immediately. And don't worry about it sounding logical or not. You're just going to go with it. This is just like brain dumping, right? We're not questioning it. This is what came up in my brain when I asked myself this. Layer 2, good parents have good kids that listen to them. Another thought that popped up here was something is wrong here. And another little like kind of under the thought, which I was surprised about, was that children should listen to their parents and children should be like seen and not heard, kind of went together for me there. And again, these aren't conscious. This is what came up when I started asking my brain. Layer 3, then I must not be a good parent. Layer 4, something is wrong with me. I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. This is shame. The lowest layer will always be shame. The lowest layers will sound like this. I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not seen. I'm not loved. I'm not heard. I'm not valued. I'm not accepted. There must be something wrong with me. And also I'll note that these ones are either going to feel really, really true, like concrete, like stuck, or they're going to feel really emotionally and attached. Like sometimes when I think about this, once I get to that lowest level, I tear up a little bit. Like there's some emotion connected there. Shame is the lower layer. The more you dig it up, you notice it, you process it, the less frequently you'll feel frustrated at your non-listening kiddos or anything else, your hubby, your teens, friends, whatever, and you'll get less intensely triggered less frequently over time. So no matter, this can work for any trigger, by the way. This isn't just specific to parenting. It's like a sister sending a passive aggressive text, or when someone comments on changes to your body, or when your husband forgets something to do that you've asked him to do 1,000 times, or when you get yelled at for something you didn't even do. Another example I put here on my post was when a police officer pulls you over for having a burnt out headlight. For some reason, police officers like just immediately get triggered. I'm just like, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Okay. So that's a little example that I shared just recently on Instagram, but I think it's a really great way to determine if there's shame present. So again, this is like, if you're consciously like, no, I'm doing a really good job, and you're listening to this episode and you're like, no, I don't relate to that at all. I would just offer to do this little exercise. When was the last time that I felt triggered, where I felt that emotional activation? Dig under the surface, and see what's there for you. Okay. So if you would like help with this, again, I am doing a 5-day workshop / coaching / live event / all the cool things. I don't have a cool name for it yet, but it's going to be cool for $5. That's only $1 every day for 5 days. Also, you'll get the recordings for that week. You'll have a week to finish the recordings from the first day to the last. We are going to be starting it on September 30th. It will go through to October 4th. And I'll also be starting a new coaching program for parents of elementary aged kids that next Monday, October 7th. So you can find more info about that in the show notes there as well. So tell your friends. We'll be coaching and teaching and doing all sorts of fun work. You'll leave feeling more confident in your parenting. You'll have specific tools on how to do this going forward, but also we will do this together. So you will feel more clarity on like how to do it and what to do, and bring any other parenting questions and struggles as well. Even if you only come for one day, even if you can only make it for one day, you will feel better after one day. You'll also feel more clarity and more calm around what really matters most to you. So that if you fast forward and imagine your kiddo leaving the house tomorrow, today, this weekend, like mine is right now, you can feel confident in the values that you instilled in them and in the connection and relationship that you have with them, and in knowing that they will want to keep that connection open with you, and just trusting that everything is going to work out. Everything is going to be okay. And remember that manifestation principle of even if you don't see evidence of it now, that it still will be, and that will turn out for everyone's highest good. So I will see you there, I hope, and share this one with some friends, bring them with us, and we will see you shortly. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, I would love for you to help spread the word by getting this message of support and guidance out to as many people as possible. So text it to your best friend or tag me on Instagram and share it. Leave a review, rate it, subscribe it, or follow on your favorite platform. Send me a DM on IG letting me know which parts have impacted you or what you'd like to see on future episodes. We'll see you next week.